Welcome to the Dream On podcast. I am Travis Gentry. This is Julia Gentry.
The hostess of the mostest. Last episode, I was the co-host, and no more. I don't like being the co-host. I'm going to be the hostess.
Well, welcome back if you're joining us again, or welcome if you're just joining us for the first time.
And we are on this new kick where we get to ask each other questions that the other person has no idea, no clue. We've not done any of this behind the scenes. This is all real time, and it's my turn.
No, you did it last time.
No, that's not. No. Least favorite game is this one right here, ladies and gentlemen. So, for the sake of the exercise, Travis.
A yes or no?
If you, it's not a yes or no question. It's fair. We can really get personal here.
Truth or dare? Go. Dare.
That's awesome. We should do that next time. Join us for next episode where we will be playing Truth or Dare. Okay, if you could spend one day with someone, dead or alive, fiction or nonfiction, who would you spend the day with and why?
Wow.
Cue Cammy for elevator music. Go.
Yeah.
And while Travis is thinking, I'll fill the awkward space. I think that these are actually fun questions to ponder for yourself. So as you're sitting there listening, I think it'd be good for you to just even push pause right now during our awkward silence and think about who's one person that you would want to spend the day with and why.
I would say right now, one of the first people, there's a couple people, but one of the people I want to spend time with, I will, because I'm committed to spending time with him.
Me?
No, he doesn't know.
That's because
he doesn't know it yet.
Okay.
But the other person is Alex Hermosi.
Okay.
So he has a big YouTube channel. He owns acquisition.com, and I just like how he thinks. And he's way further ahead than us in business. And I would love to just be with him and ask him questions and look at everything that he's got going on and why he does what he does.
And tell me some of, just real quick, what would be the top 3 questions? Not because they're the most important, but just...
Whoa. No. You get one question. I answered my question.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you all these offline. Okay, but I love that answer because part of what we talk so much about here on this podcast and everything that we do at the dreamfactoryandco.com is talk about the importance of our mindset. That it's not only understanding what you need to do, but it's understanding the mindset around why people do what they do. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that answer because what you're asking is I just want to understand what he thinks, which I think is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Which today you get to hear what we think on another amazing topic. What are we talking about today, Trav?
We are talking about comparison.
So here we are on this series as we unpack all the things that we need to quit doing in order to be more successful. That it's not just about acquiring one more thing or adding one more thing to your plate, but actually, what am I willing to let go of that won't get me to where I've never been? Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about comparison today. You go first.
No, you go first. My mind is just racing.
I have another question.
No. You have another question?
I do.
About comparison?
Who do you compare yourself to and why?
Who do I compare myself to? I don't compare myself. I would that's a fair question. I don't know if I would compare myself to the people. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I judge, but
you guys, he's speechless. He doesn't.
I could go in a few different directions with this, like Alex Hermosi, like who I said. I don't compare myself to him by any means, but I see attributes in him that I could get better within myself.
On a good day, but that's not true on a bad day.
What do you mean?
Meaning, so like I'll just own my own dirty laundry, right? As we jump right in, first and foremost, is I think that comparison is quote unquote human nature, but I don't think that it is biblical. Let's just put it this way. So I think that a lot of times you and I are always unpacking like, okay, if you don't feel good at something, that's human nature. If you fail, like human nature, people pleasing, human nature, right? Like we have a human nature, but I think also, especially as believers, we are called to rise above our own human nature. So what I'm about to say first is to say, I think we all have a level of comparison, which is not helped based upon social media and YouTube and the fact that I can watch anyone else's life, and we do watch everybody else's life probably way too many hours a day. So like for me, I would say I can really fall into this comparison when I look at someone who is further along, and instead of I wonder what they're doing that I could be doing better, or, oh, look at them, look at all the hard work that they put into it, or it's generally like, what am I not doing enough of, or I'm doing something wrong, or what I'm doing is not going to work, or they're better than I am on a not conscious day. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a great conversation because I think we're approaching it two different ways.
Okay.
Ish. Where I look at it as like when you say comparison, I look at it as like a metric. So I look at that person and the metrics, and I could, in a pie chart, separate it in different areas of their life. And we'll just use Alex Hormozi as an example. Physically, financially, relationally, like with his spouse. He works with his spouse. So I can look at that and kind of categorize that, and then I use it as a metric, and then I gauge it based off of where I think I am.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's how I compare. But most often when I see like an Alex, I never judge him for like the success financially that he's had. He obviously is doing something I'm not doing, and I want to do and know. That's why I said I just want to understand how he thinks, because his thinking then turns into action. So how does he think? And then his actions that are getting him the result, I want to know that. So I don't judge it like in the sense of like comparison of like in a bad way.
Yeah, so let's actually though, I would say that 99.99999% of people are not using this as a metric or a model. So let's just table that for just a second, because I think that I wouldn't even call that comparison. When I think of comparison, what I'm thinking about is that I'm actually comparing myself to you. I'm comparing myself to who I used to be. I'm comparing myself to who I should be. I'm comparing myself to someone better than me. And it's actually not helping me. It's hurting me.
And that's why I think this is going to be a good conversation, because I think when you say that, I just internalize it a little differently than you do, which is fine. That's the great part of comparison.
For sure. And this is why I want to talk about it, because I think that the way you're seeing it could aid anyone listening who's actually not doing this well, right? Like their comparison is not serving them. And I'm going to give a couple examples today that have just been on my heart that I wanted to talk out with you. And then use what you're talking about as a way to do it better.
Yeah. And I think I used to, how you're communicating it, I used to do it that way. I think more in a negative connotation. Of like, I don't have what they have, or I'm not where they're at, or they have a better body, or they have, their bone structure's better, or they grew up in a better neighborhood, or grew up in a better family, or whatever. Like you're comparing that.
Yeah, or it's even the person who I'm talking to a gal the other day, she's 57 years old, and I said, what is a can't not dream that you have for this year? And she says, she gives me the weight that she wants to be. And I said, what is that? She goes, it was my weight when I was 23. And I was like, can you explain that to me more? And she goes, I just want to be what I used to be physically.
Okay.
And you're like, I love you and I appreciate you, but you're a 57-year-old woman. Like, don't be the 27-year-old woman. Be the best 57-year-old woman. And it was like I had just said something that she had never heard before. Like, she honestly looked at me like, I don't even know how to do that. Because she was comparing her current body and even creating a metric or a goal around something that you're like, but now you're living in the past. Your goal is actually just trying to be who you were 30 years ago as opposed to who you could be today. And so I just feel like this thing of comparison is actually hurting more people than helping more people. And I don't think we realize that it's happening. And I don't think that it's equipping us to be the best person that God has called us to be.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, though, we also know someone recently that is in their late 50s or 60s that I think is better than they were in their 20s.
But you know what's funny about that? Is when I asked her, have you been this weight before? She goes, oh yeah, this was how she answered. She goes, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure actually this is the lightest I've ever been. But she's like, that wasn't my goal. And I said, well, what was your goal? And
that's
she
exactly
goes,
what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, so she's like, her goal wasn't to be what she was. Her goal was to be the best that she knew she could possibly be at this age. And it just so happened to supersede her best that she's ever been.
Exactly the point I wanted to make.
Okay, so this is where we're going to go today. Do it.
No, that's exactly my point. Is that it's not looking back in the rearview mirror. It's like driving your car, but living in through the rearview mirror. The rear view mirror is a lot smaller than the windshield on your car. So, but can you have better results in this situation than when you were 26? So you set that gauge of like, well, I want to be that when I was 26. But what if when like you could have been better when you were 26, but what if when you're 50 or 60, you could actually be better than that 26-year-old in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And so it's not looking and saying, well, if I could just be there or that weight, then I'd be happy and fulfilled. But what if you could be even better and that could be even heavier than when you were 26, but you have more muscle? Like there's so many different ways that you can look at that.
Okay, so let's unpack this for just a second. I think that the slippery slope in this comparison and why it's so detrimental to the potential heaven on earth, dreaming God dreams, like truly making the impossible possible in our lives is because we are living under this illusion that when I get there, then I'll be happy. When I have that, if I look like her, if I look like how I used to, if I had more people following me on YouTube, when I get there, then I will be happier. But the problem is the magic that we're looking for is in the work that we're avoiding to just be the best version of ourselves. That's where the true fulfillment really is, right? Because if I'm actually chasing the when I get there, then I will. You and I have already done that a million times. When I get there, then I'll be happier. When we have that, then we'll be. And it's this illusion. And it's the magic that we're wanting is in any given moment to go, is this the best version of me in this moment? That's the fulfillment, is when you know that you are actually in pursuit of being the best you at all times with no limits around age or circumstances or environment. Like that's the magic that we're missing.
Yeah. And yes, we can go down so many paths, especially, so let's just keep on kind of the weight loss. And because I think a lot of people can relate to that as far as like, okay, when I was 20, I looked like this, or I weighed this amount. And it's like, you can look skinny, but be obese.
Totally.
And so it's you got to use different metrics. How do I feel? And the muscle that I have relative to maybe what I had in the past. So I may weigh more, but I feel better and my clothes fit actually better than they did when I was 26.
Well, and you know what's so key to this then, if we're going back to this example of the lady that you're talking about, I said to her, after she said, "Oh yeah, I mean it's the lightest I've ever been," but that wasn't my motive. I wanted to feel the best that I could possibly feel. I said, "So how do you feel?" She says, "Great." I said, "Is it sustainable?" She goes, 1,000%. I think that's also when we've kicked into a totally different gear, because willpower in theory can get me anywhere if I want to get there enough, right? So even to this idea of, well, when I get there and I lose the weight, when I make $1 million, when we move, when we can willpower ourselves to any goal. The problem is we generally can't sustain it because my motive wasn't pure. My motive was for affirmation. My motive was to prove someone wrong. My motive was something, but you know that you're onto something when now I'm actually not comparing myself to anyone or anything, including my past me, and I'm actually focused on the end result that I want most, and then it's sustainable. That to me means is the biggest difference.
Yep, and that's why New Year's resolutions don't work. Because you said, okay, I'm going to start here. I'm going to achieve this goal for the next 90 days. And that's why even dropping our au pair off at the gym, and the parking lot was packed. And I was like, I've seen this before.
It's New Year's.
Yeah, I've seen this movie.
You're like,
movie
crank
before.
it in, just play that
Sign them
tape.
all up, and then 30 days goes by, and then 60 days go by, and people start to fall off, and then 90 days, and then I think it's about 90-ish days, it's back to the normal people.
Totally.
The people that are committed and there for the journey of it, not just that achieve that one goal.
Well, and I think the people which it's so interesting because I've been reading a lot on this again, New Year's resolutions, the amount of people setting New Year's resolutions is going down exponentially every year. Like this year, it's like 38% of people even set them, probably because to your point, we're not keeping them, so I'm just forget it, I'm not even going to do it.
Yep.
But then of those 38% that are doing them by mid-February, 80% have fallen off again. And I think part of it is because what gets me going in the morning, like I could compare and go, oh, you know what, I just want to look like them, or I want to have more, or all of the wrong motives will get me into the gym. But the question is, will those motives keep me going to the gym? You're like, this motive might get me up, doing a few social posts and doing a few videos. Here's Travis like, Julie, you got to do more videos. I'm like, I got to do this sustainably, because if my motive is to do the video to just look like that guy and have as many followers as that guy, to your point, you've said you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, okay, great. Anyone can do a video. Anyone can write a chapter of a book. Anyone can get in the gym the first 30 days. Anyone can do those things. But the question is, can you sustain them? And that has to get us out of a comparison and into like sheer commitment and conviction.
Yeah. People live too often in too short of a time frame.
Tell me more about
As opposed to saying, okay, like with the YouTube. And really pressing into that. We've started and stopped, and same thing with the podcast of like, okay, we're gonna go all out for 6 months. And if it doesn't get the results we want, we're done. Well, no, we should be looking at it and saying a waypoint is 6 months, but we'll look at it and readjust, every 6 months, but we're committed to it for 6 years.
Yeah.
And so we've got to change our perspective. Same thing with working out. Like you got to look at it and say, no, like this is a lifestyle. So what's sustainable? Not like this 90 days, I'm going all in. We've talked about it multiple times. It's not a bad thing, but it's not sustainable. It's 75 hard. So you've got to look at it and say, what can I add to my daily routine, and add something and then take something away. And then once I get comfortable and in a rhythm with that, then what's one more thing I can do?
Yeah, well,
and that's the same thing with the videos that you're doing. Little by little, they're getting better, and you're adding and changing and tweaking. But it's a journey. It's not like this destination.
You guys, if you could just help me with the process by sharing more, clicking like, doing all the things, that would be so great. That would be great in my journey of sustaining. So here's my question though. How do you manage? Here's what I believe the root of comparison is this idea that I'm not good enough. That right? I think that as I've done this work with thousands of people, and I talk about this in my book, we talk a lot about the protest and the thing that you really fear the most. 80% of people will say that they fear their own lack of self-worth. Self-worth is a huge deal for people, right? They're not worthy, they're not enough. Like who they are doesn't matter, right? So we, again, going back to that human nature concept, is that I think that here God created us going like, you have a purpose and a plan, and I knew the beginning from the end. That was his original design. Then you got the enemy that comes in and goes, I'm going to manipulate that and make them think that they're of no value, of no worth, right? So I would say that that's in the earthly human nature for us to do that. But what happens in this comparison is it's the seed of I'm not good enough, the seed of I have no self-worth or self-esteem. And yet what we're saying is that like, okay, there's these moments that you are inviting you to be the best version of you, which implies you're not the best version of you in this moment, which could be that slippery slope of, see, I'm not good enough and I have no value. So the juxtaposition of I'm not my best self in pursuit of my best self, and I don't even look like that guy. You see how all of a sudden it becomes a slippery slope of like, how do you do the juxtaposition of I have this seed of I'm not good enough. I'm supposed to be leaning into being the best version of me. They're way further ahead. I used to have, like, how do you juggle that conversation?
Oh man, I think we could go in a few different directions. As you're saying that, I would say what I've seen in the past that I would get triggered by is exactly what we're talking about with the New Year's resolutions. If you don't fulfill the commitment that you made to yourself, it starts to reinforce that of like when I say I'm going to do something, I don't do it.
You're breaking the promises.
You're breaking the promises to yourself. And so at some point, you don't even say the promises because you already stop before you start. Or you start, but it's undercover. Yeah. You're afraid to go public. You're afraid to put it out there or tell your friends and family because you've done that in the past, but not followed through with it for whatever reason.
Yeah, which then is coupled with, so I think if we're unpacking how a lack of self-worth is fostered and grown, right? Is that you keep making promises that you're not keeping to yourself, with just chips away and chips away and chips away at your own right belief in yourself. And then I would also say that it's the subtle belief when someone else puts you down, right? When someone maybe does say you're not good enough or rejects you or abandons you, it's like the stacking of that must be true.
Yep. And so I was going to say that was one of the other points, so you hit right on it, is your community, the people that you're around. Because at some level, if you're around the same people doing the same things for the last 5, 10, 20 years, for you to get out of that environment is going to be really hard when you start to succeed or you start to look different. We felt that in the past. Like, we love working out, and it was like we would kind of try different things as far as food and what we're eating, and it's like a joke. You know, it has been in the past where we'd go to a family function, and still today, because you're breastfeeding and you're very conscious of what you put in your body because it affects our baby.
Yeah.
And so we'll show up somewhere and they're like, oh yeah, you know, Gentrys aren't eating this, you know, or whatever. But we're so convicted by the result that we're going after that it doesn't bother us. And then at some level, you have to be around the people that are kind of going in the same place that you're going.
Yeah, well, I think because what you're alluding to is that if I'm in an environment that other people's beliefs about me are louder than my own, which aren't already good, mind you, now I'm basically, right, I'm in the dark playing a game I didn't even know I was playing.
Yep.
Right? So I think that that's what's happening. I think that that's what causes. It's like we aren't born thinking I'm not good enough. I think that we are making promises that we're not keeping, and I think we're allowing other people's beliefs about us to stack.
Yeah, 100%. And that goes, we did a podcast a couple episodes ago about drinking, and that's a big one. Because if you were the drinker, the fun person that shows up and parties, and whether it's a work event or just the weekends with your friends, and then you come to the realization that that's not the life and the path I want, it's really hard to stay friends with those people. Some will come, but majority will go because they identify you, they know you as that person. So for you to go and hang out with them and not drink, one, it's not going to be as fun for you, but two, they are going to make comments about you. They are going to like compare because more than likely they're struggling themselves and want something different, but they haven't made that commitment.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and then, you know, the thing that this conversation for myself, this was probably 3 years ago. I remember, I don't know if it was an interview or what I saw, but this was actually by Michael Jordan. And he shares of his story of when his career really took off. And he said that he was playing ball, was like really starting to make a name for himself. And then all of a sudden his career plateaus. And of course, like anybody who, right, you're only as good as your next shot, right, in the basketball shot anyways. Your next song, right, your next book, like that. So often we see that. And so he says he's sitting on the bus after a game one day and he's like, I have a problem. I'm not showing up like you need to be showing up. Like I'm not playing as good as I should be playing. And he starts to realize that he's comparing himself to his last game. He's comparing himself to other players on the court. Like he's doing this thing. And all of a sudden he says, I made this literal commitment to myself that I would no longer compare myself to anyone else. And I wouldn't even compare myself to my last game. He said the only thing that I would do is start to ask myself at any given moment is I will play to the best of my ability in every single game, which is self-accountability because nobody else knows what his best game actually could look like other than him. And he said that it was that place of ownership and commitment and conviction, we'll use that word, that he said that took him to the totally different level as being now the greatest ever in the history of time when it comes to basketball is because he made that commitment to himself. And I think that at some level, that's the way through this barrier is that we have to audit ourselves to go, oh man, I am comparing myself to who I used to be or to that person. But at some level, I have to be so connected with myself and my best potential at any given moment that I play that game.
Mm-hmm. So it is coming back a little bit to like rethinking how you're looking at it.
Yeah.
And it is a metric on yourself though. You're not comparing, was I as good as that basketball player? No. Was I as good as I possibly could be? And if I wasn't, what do I need to change off the court to be better on the court?
So what I love about what you said about Alex Hormozi and how now I link some of this is that I believe that we have examples in our world that show us an inkling of what is possible, right? Any of us could say, well, it's impossible to make $1 million. Not impossible, right? It's impossible to have a marriage that's connected and have kids and all things. Not impossible, right? Like I see that if we're actually looking at this from a healthy perspective, we have a lot around us that tells us there's a lot more possible than not, okay? But that's also just a starting point because let's say, I'm just going to use your example. You have this dream of what's potentially possible in your mind around the business you want, the income you want, the family you want, the health you want. You find an Alex Hormozi that basically gives you hope to go, any of that's possible. Here's how and he is a think tank for you, that he sets a new standard of potentially what's possible. Now, most of us take that and go, oh, well, I'm not as good as him. And we immediately start that downward spiral of comparison as opposed to, no, all he did is open up the door of possibilities. And now I need to do the Michael Jordan and I need to go, all right, but the world doesn't need another Alex Hormozi. The world needs another Travis Gentry. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now I start to go, what would it look like? He set a standard and has opened a door that this is possible. But what would it look like now for me to be the best version of me, to be me who God created me to be, and to show up the best that I know how in any given moment?
Yep.
Now I feel like we're playing at a totally different level.
Yep. And I do that with, I said at the beginning, like a pie and it's divided. I look at that in all areas. Because everything Alex Hormozi, I wouldn't want to be.
Yeah.
One, he doesn't have kids. I have 5.
Yeah.
And so
Alex, do that. You know what I'm saying?
So
that's my new, I just want everybody to know anytime that they're like, yeah, but they have that many more followers or they make that much more or that. Yeah, but they don't have 5 children.
Unless someone comes and says, well, I have 10. Because I actually know someone that has 10 kids that's actually crushing it.
Okay.
So.
Here's that one. I'm coming for you.
So I think it for me, I look at it in different segments of my life. And I take the value that I see that they're further ahead, and I take that piece to create, coming back to the best me. So he's one section, physically, and nutrition is one, financially, stock trading is one, real estate is one. And I look at those and I find the people and I identify the things that they have that I don't have.
Yeah.
And typically it's the thought process.
Yeah.
And then the thoughts.
Okay, wait, stop on that though. Because that's what I think, this is the only way that we start to kill comparison, because it will happen, right? On any level, is that, especially if it's someone else, I think that what we have to train ourselves to do is the moment that we see someone that has what we want, or that jealousy or comparison, right, pops up, we have to go, am I willing to do what they've done to get what they got? And am I willing to actually ask the question, how do they think about this area of life? Like, that's what you said, is like, I just want to sit with Alex Hormozi, not because I want what he has, I want to know what he thinks, because if I know what he thinks, then it's going to equip me to continue to be the best version of me, which gets me out of comparison. It gets me into curiosity. It gets me into creating. And then it gets me into like, do I really care that much? Like, am I actually that committed to know what he knows, to learn what he's learned, to do what he's done, right? Only channeled through doing it the way that I know how to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And coming back to the example of working out, where it's like our friend that we're talking about that achieved what she did and feels better and weighs less than she did when she was 26, is that she knew what she wanted. Yeah. So it's like, that's where most often people fail when they go work out, is because they have this misalignment of expectations of like, whether, I want to look like that, but am I willing to put in the work that takes to get that? Or do I just want to feel better? I want my clothes to feel better. So you've got to look at it and say, what do I really want? So I look at an Alex or Robert Kiyosaki, whoever it is, and I say, what is it in their life that I would like that kind of result? Because I'm different with 5 kids and the freedom and what I want to do than him. So I can't take everything about him. And I think there again, we could go down different paths, but like finding and making someone an idol.
Yeah, 100%.
And you look at them and you're like, I want everything. I want to be better than that person. And you're like, one, are you willing to do what they've done to get to that point? Because there's a lot of setbacks and failures and time, because it's not overnight success. He's been doing it for 5-10 years. And it's like, no, I don't, but I do like this section. And if I had a few different thoughts than how I think now, I know I could be further ahead to add to me, to be the best version of me.
Yeah, which is so interesting because I think even in last episode's podcast around people pleasing and this, you hit the nail on the head, which is this is a level of idolatry that I think we're not even looking at, right? Because if I'm people pleasing, I care more about what you think than what God thinks. Mm-hmm. I've totally lost sight of what God thinks because I'm so fixated on what you think. That's an idol, mm-hmm. right? Like, well, they're going to reject me. Will God reject you? Well, no. Okay, then that's an idol because you're saying that their rejection is greater than God's rejection, right? Like that's an idol. That just trumped God's perspective. Same thing with comparison, which is, okay, God, they're doing it better than me, or, right? And I think we have to take some of us are like, well, we need to just pray better prayers to God. No, God, I think is a God who can handle our real. So, okay, God, here's this person doing all of these great things, and I'm all of a sudden starting to feel less than and insufficient. What do you say about me? Mm-hmm. Right? Like otherwise it becomes an idol. That person becomes an idol. Their results become an idol, right? And now I'm chasing the dollar, I'm chasing the number, I'm chasing the metric, which means I've put that over, hey God, what do you say about me?
Yep.
What do you think about me? Who do you say that I am? And instead of just looking at all of these visual metrics that we can have and should have and need to have and did have and want to have and all of these things, is that when was the last time we actually sat with God and said, God, who do you see me as? And what does the best version of me look like from heaven's perspective? Because in theory, that's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there again, we could talk biblically too about like money. The root of all evil is not money. It's making it your idol.
Yeah, it's a love of money.
And we've seen, and we've talked about this too, when I am almost like a greyhound dog on a track chasing money, it runs further away. When I go and I sit and I live out.
Did you just come up with that analogy right now?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
A greyhound dog on a track. So next time you're greyhounding, should I say that?
You're chasing money and you feel like a greyhound and you're never getting anywhere and it gets further away and you're running faster and harder and you never catch it. That's the point of the greyhound. They never get the rabbit. And so it's looking at that, and it's like when I live in a state of what you're talking about. Okay, God, like, starting out my day, and it could be meditation, quiet time, prayer, whatever that is, setting my expectations for the day, understanding, okay, who do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to give to the world around me? What am I grateful for? And living out that day the best that I can, things come to me. Mm-hmm. It's not me forcing it. Do I put in the work? Yes. And it goes back to, I think we mentioned it on the prior podcast. It's like, it's both and.
Well, and I think what's interesting though is that if I actually surrender that first and then I let my go mode fall back behind my flow mode, mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? Like what we're doing is we're basically coming up with the strategies and the willpower and the push first, as opposed to what if I actually surrender and go, God, what do you see in me? Mm-hmm. Who have you called me to be? What's ahead of me now? Right? And then our strategy fell behind that because we knew who we were. Mm-hmm. That changes everything. If I'm now living my life and I'm no longer the greyhound on the track, but I'm actually in alignment with what heaven's doing, which is our greatest commission, right? Mm-hmm. Go and do as I've done, only do greater things in these. Like actually pull heaven to earth. We are to co-labor with what God is doing. Like that's not a plead. Like we're not here going, God, please help us be better. No, God is basically like, can you just partner with what I'm doing? You're not pleading your prayers. Mm-hmm. You're actually partnering with me to do this. Well, I have to know who I am. Mm-hmm. I have to know at a baseline that I am a child of God. And then if I need to do maybe some of the other, right, like emotional intelligence tests or Enneagram or something, like just to get a better understanding of like how I approach problems, how I look at details, if I don't take some responsibility to know me better, then I'm going to suck at this game, and I'm going to start comparing, and then I'm going to make an idol of another person or another metric, and then I'm going to wonder why I'm burning out.
100%, and you're going to be on the wrong track too.
Yeah.
And we've experienced that too in the past, where what you think you want, and you're like, when we get there, then everything's going to be great, and and then you get there and you're like, this is really actually not what I wanted. I wanted to make money so I can go live out my dreams, adventure, and see new things, and be with my family during the day, and homeschool, and all the things. It's not the money, it was what money gave me.
Yeah.
But once you put money as a status, and you buy the house and the cars and all the things, and you look good, but you don't feel good, then you come to the realization of like, I was chasing it for the wrong reason.
100%. It was the idol.
It was the idol.
It was the idol, which then, of course, it backfires on you, right? And money, in theory, to your point, has always been an output of the amount of value you give, right? But I think that's the root of all of this, I think, is that we have lost our identity in children of being a child of God. Like, I think that's what happens with comparison, is that I've just forgotten who he says that I am, and I'm not spending any time with him saying, who did you create me to be? Who did you, and even in these moments, like, I found myself in moments with the kids when I'm not acting the way that I want to be acting. I've honestly said this to myself in a moment. I go, God, show me right now, remind me who you've created me to be. Sometimes nothing happens. Like, I'm going to be honest. It's not like God's writing something on the wall that all of a sudden I'm like, oh, look, but other times, all of a sudden it lands so strongly that I am a kind, approachable mom, that I have everything I need to lead these children, that he's given them to me specifically because I am the mom who can be what they need them to be. And instantly, I'm no longer Pinteresting how to be the best mom anymore. Why? Because I'm now in this dance with myself and God that says, I need to really trust.
Am I being the best mom in those moments?
That I'm just leaning in and allowing the question to evoke the answer.
Yep.
Like, the best version of me isn't out there. It's in here.
Yep.
And am I making space and margin to one, ask a question, but then two, to practice being her? Then I think that drives the sustainability to not only get on the path to lose the weight, or to be the approachable mom, right? Or to do whatever the do is. I think it creates sustainability to stay there, to stay the course.
100%. It's one thing getting there, but it's the other to maintain and stay there and grow and create that as your new foundation to get then to the next level. But the misexpectation of, there again, 75 hard, I'm going to do it hard for 75 days, exhaust myself, and probably be triggered and go back to my old habits and patterns. And then in 75 more days, I'm back probably worse than I was before, as opposed to saying, like, who do I want to be? Where do I want to, like, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, whatever it is, and know that it's a progression.
Yeah.
And it's not just here and now, but they're, again, talking about time frames.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think knowing that, to your point, we are on a journey. I think you're right. Waypoints are great, right? All the metrics, all the things are out there. We can Google.
So you know you're getting progression.
Yeah, but do that. Layer all of the technique on top of the truth. I think we're doing technique looking for the truth. Well, no, you have the truth. The truth will set you free. And then guess what works better?
Yep.
The techniques.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
We could Google how to do any of the things. So I think what we're inviting all of you into in this podcast today is those moments of comparison are actually an invitation for you to lean in and to better identify who you are as a child of God. Those are those moments. That's like a freedom moment right there, is the moment that you're comparing yourself to who you used to be, or comparing yourself to that person on Instagram, is that, one, you have to catch it. But then two, I think it's a freedom moment to go, wait a minute, who am I here? Right? Like, who has God called me to be? And what would it look like for me not to be that person, but just to be the best version of me in every moment? I think that's the idea.
And then analyzing, like, stepping back and looking at like, why am I comparing them? Like, to me, it's like, it's easy. Like, most people don't think about that. Most people just look and they have that judgment or whatever, but it's like, what am I comparing? Good or bad, but what am I comparing? At the end of the day, am I being the best that I can? Am I comparing them because I feel like they're further ahead in an area? Okay, great. Don't look at it as a negative. Maybe they have some knowledge or new thoughts that you could adapt, but don't try to be and model them.
Yeah. model the mindset. This
Yes.
is what you had said, like model the mindset. Let that be an invitation to, oh, this is possible. You've said this all the time, like if they can do it, so can I. You know, and then I have to ask myself, do I want to? Right? Like I could say the other day, Malachi said to me, Mom, if you weren't an author and a speaker, which I was like, yeah, buddy. He's like, if you were an author and speaker, what would you do? I'd say I'd be a country singer. He goes, well, why don't you do that? I'm like, because I didn't want it enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, I actually don't know if I have a good voice. So there is that. But then I was like, okay, Carrie Underwood could do it. Like in theory, I have the open invitation to do this, but am I willing to do? No, I'm not willing to do those things. Okay, great, then don't, right? So I think that part of this, to your point, is as we're looking at who we're comparing, why, either let it be an invitation to, hey, this is possible, and then ask, okay, then am I willing, right? If that's a metric of what's possible, how do I be the best version of me, and am I willing to actually walk that thing out to be that person?
Yep.
Not chasing the, well, when I get there, then I will, or I'm going to just, you know, grind it out. It's no, is this sustainable, and is this going to allow me to be the best version of me every step of the way?
Yep. And you can also sit there with that. Okay, why am I judging them? Then if I got there, how would I feel? What would that look like? Do you think it's going to give you, there again, you have no money, you have money, and you sit with it, and you're like, okay, how will that make me feel?
Yeah.
Like, will that make me act different? Will that make me be different? Or, you know, like, so you've got to be committed to the journey and the process of what you need to go through, not what they went through.
100%.
Can people expedite and speed up your time? Yes, because you typically pay with time or money to learn a new skill or new thoughts. And at the end of the day, you still have to go through your own journey to adapt whatever that is that maybe you're comparing from on someone else.
Well, and I would say in closing, I think the biggest thing to consider is do it till it makes you proud. Not till someone else is proud, not till you even have that metric. Like take each moment and each day and do it until you're proud, because you are the only one that ultimately knows. Right? Back to that point of Michael Jordan. He's like, I'm the only one that ever knows if I've left everything I could on that court. I'm the only one. Even if I win, I could still know that I didn't actually do as good as I could have done.
Yep.
And I think that would be the goal, is do it until you're proud.
Yep. And I would throw this in. If you haven't read, if you're new, if you haven't read the book, Dream I Dare You, pick up a copy. There's a workbook, there's a journal, but there's also community. And so check us out online and get a part of the community, the Facebook group.
Which we'll put links in the show notes so you can have easy access to join us on these conversations. Because believe it or not, actually, these last 2 weeks, that's all our Facebook group has been talking about. It's people pleasing, comparing, setting goals, keeping goals. How do you push past hard moments? So that is the conversation we're having real time, hour by hour. And we'd love for you to join us.
Yes, absolutely. So until next time, we appreciate you and dream on.